Okay, let's take a look at G.I JOE The Atlantis Factor from developers Kid and publishers Capcom. Released in 1991, the game is based off the successful G.I JOE action figures from Hasbro and the mid-80s cartoon series. It's also a sequel to the first NES game, which was also called G.I JOE. Essentially, a year has passed since the JOE team infiltrated and destroyed the Cobra Commander's secret island base in the Atlantic. After this devastating attack, the Cobras discovered that all was not lost. The island they were on is actually left over from what was once Atlantis. The Cobras then make a significant discovery whilst excavating this mystical island and find an ancient power source that was so powerful it could resurrect the dead. They use it to resurrect their leader who had died long ago, the Cobra Commander. Now with the Cobra team back together and ready to wipe out the JOEs, the leader decides to harness the ancient power of Atlantis to not only stop his enemies, but to also destroy the world. And so it's up to General Hawk to power himself up and get the JOE team back together by taking part in different missions and acquiring teammates, each with unique abilities, in order to take them into battle to fight the evil Cobra army. G.I JOE The Atlantis Factor puts you first in control of General Hawk, with the option to play as other characters or JOEs once you have found them in various stages. The game itself is a platform strategy shooter where a lot of emphasis is placed upon powering up the General and the other JOEs in your command, with the goal to make each one as powerful as possible to help Hawk tackle the more difficult missions later on. Once you have found enough JOEs, then you can choose to take 3 into battle. On the surface, the Atlantis Factor might seem to be just a simple run from one end of the screen to the next, mindlessly blasting anything that moves type of game. However, the key to this game is ensuring that the power-ups you find are distributed sensibly. For example, you might have 3 JOEs in battle and perhaps one of them might be a little bit weaker than the other 2, so try and power up the weaker one as soon as you can. The stronger each JOE becomes, the more damage they can dole out and the longer they will last in battle. Speaking of power-ups, they are everywhere in this game, the most common being the POWs. Once you find one, you need to push select to decide whether you want the POW to increase your punches and fighting skills or whether to power up your weapons. Each JOE you find has a special ability that can be used, and part of this game is figuring out who to best use in a particular mission. The main character, General Hawk, can jump really high and is pretty agile, whilst Wetsuit can't jump very high, but he is able to swim underwater, and this enables him to collect items that the other JOEs simply can't get to. There's also Roadblock, who can't jump very high but is able to crawl, Solid Snake style, and this makes him ideal as he can only fit into certain narrow alcoves. Also there's the Ninja Storm Shadow, what a cool name, who can jump pretty high and has a really good short range attack. Whilst each JOE shares an ammunition meter, they each have their own individual life bars, and switching between each of them to beat bosses or to collect health is absolutely essential. The missions themselves are quite short but fast paced, and no sooner do you finish one before you have the option to do another. Orders come from Stalker, your commander, and as you make progress you can choose from a few missions to tackle, and this is where the strategy element really comes into play, as you may find that certain missions will need to be completed later on once your team is stronger, as many of the game's bosses need to be taken down with a more powerful weapon. Also, if one of your character dies, and provided you have another one with you, then you have to start the mission or boss over again with that character, and you kind of carry on until all of your JOEs are wounded. I really like the mission structure for the most part, and once I figured out how to play this game it really became a lot more enjoyable, as at first I didn't really know what I was doing. The graphics themselves are amazing, and the gameplay, whilst good early on, soon starts to get a little bit annoying, because this is one of those games where the enemies respawn, and whilst this can be a good thing if you need to pick up a power up that flies away, it can really hinder progress, particularly if you have already taken down a difficult cluster of enemies, only to have them turn back up again when you go off the screen briefly. It's not a game breaker by any means, but it can cause your character to suffer some cheap hits and potential deaths later on. Considering you need to strategize who to take into battle with you, then you can get killed off pretty quickly because of this. The controls themselves are really good, very responsive, and being able to take your time to take out the Cobra army is essential. However, another thing that lets this game down is the inclusion of a timer. Now, I'm all for timers in video games and understand that you're up against the clock here, and it makes for some really good challenge. But the game looks and plays so good, and I didn't particularly want to hurry up, as this caused me to lose more health, and if I took a wrong turn later on, this meant I would have less time to figure out where I went wrong. Luckily I have a game genie and was able to freeze the timer, which made things a little fairer. One thing this game has tons of is bosses, and loads of them. You'll be facing guys with hammers, laser guns and crazy attacks, and on the tougher missions you will have to face off against one of the Cobra's top bosses such as Overkill, Cesspool, Firefly, Major Blood, Destro, and all this before a final battle with the Cobra Commander himself. Most of the missions that tell you to find the enemy routes tend to be purpose built to not only kill baddies but to also power up your Joes, and the end of most of these missions are radios, and by picking them up and completing certain key missions you are able to contact either Gung Ho or Spirit in missions to actually heal your Joe or to give you more ammo. You can only do this based upon how many radios you have, however. Some of the in-game missions though are really confusing and purposely cryptic. This is why I said to use a game genie to freeze the timer. The game however does give you unlimited continues and has a really nifty password system so you can carry on your progress anytime. Whilst it's not a super long game, there are more than enough missions to try, and once you are fully powered up then most of the bosses become a cakewalk. Another reason the respawning enemy patterns is a problem is because the game slows down considerably when there are too many enemies on screen, and this makes it much easier for your Joe to bite the bullet. Also, this is another game where your chosen protagonist suffers knockback after taking damage, and having to try and take out the same enemy time and time again becomes frustrating and a little annoying. I don't think this is a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, however during my time with it I really like the way that Kid put so much emphasis on upgrading your Joes, and being able to have quite a lot of them in my command was absolutely awesome. Also, this game is extremely rewarding, so despite having to spend time trying to work out how to get through a certain mission intact, you not only get an awesome cutscene, but also some new weapons the further you get through this game. So is G.I Joe the Atlantis factor worth playing today? I would still say yes, the gameplay is fun and initially a little harder to get into when you first start, however once you're off the starting blocks and have spent some time with the game, it starts to become really addictive and you will start to find your feet. I would recommend again using a game genie to help power up your Joes to learn the later missions, as once again trying to figure them out might take a few hours due to the constant threat of respawning enemies. If you're a fan of G.I Joe, or even if you're not, this is still playable but requires a full playthrough to really understand and to benefit from the game and to understand what you have to do. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my review. If you have enjoyed it then why not subscribe, as you'll really be helping my channel to grow and you'll be instantly notified every time I upload a new video, and I've got great new content like this coming each and every single week. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you next time.